The house went quiet before she even stood up. She had been sitting at his feet. She had done that before. Everyone in the room knew who she was. The sister of Lazarus, the man Jesus raised from the dead, the one who always seemed to understand something the others did not. She reached for the jar. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. She broke it. An alabaster jar sealed for life cracked open. The smell hit the room before anyone could react. Sharp, earthy, something sweet underneath, pure nard. John tells us the value in chapter 12, verse 3, 300 denarii. In that world, 1 denarius was a full day's wages. 300 was a year, every working day, poured on one man's feet in under a minute. Nobody said anything. Then Judas spoke. That is where the investigation starts. The jar that couldn't be unbroken. Mark's account, chapter 14, verse 3, has a detail most readings skip past. The text says she broke the jar, not opened it, broke it. An alabaster vessel once broken cannot be resealed. She destroyed the container at the same moment she made her decision. No partial use, no saving some for later. The jar itself was a luxury item, engineered to preserve volatile oils through months of sea transport. She destroyed it and everything in it in one act. Now here's what most people miss. Spikenard did not appear for the first time in that room. Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 12. While the king was at his table, my nard gave forth its fragrance. In the Hebrew imagination, nard already carried a specific register, intimate, royal, something used in the presence of a king. When that fragrance hit the room in Bethany, every Jewish person present heard an echo. The disciples understood the economics. Only Mary seemed to understand the timing. What she was holding had traveled 4,000 miles to get to her hands. That route is the real story. The plant that lives where humans can't. Nardostachys jatamansi does not grow conveniently. It grows on steep, rocky alpine slopes in the Himalayas, between 2,300 and 6,000 meters above sea level, roughly 7,500 to nearly 20,000 feet. The plant produces small pink flowers and looks, from a distance, entirely unremarkable. But the rhizome, the thick underground root, is where everything is. Dense, reddish-brown, fibrous material, powerfully aromatic. Harvesters dig it by hand from rocky soil at altitude. There is no faster method. The plant cannot be cultivated at lower elevations and maintain its chemical profile. The altitude is structural to what the plant is. The entire world range of this species, Indian Himalayas across Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and parts of southwest China, nowhere else on Earth. Here is what nobody mentions when they tell the story of Mary's perfume. Nardostachys jatamansi is now listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List. It also appears on CITES Appendix 2, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Commercial overharvesting for the global cosmetics and essential oil market has been steadily depleting wild Himalayan populations. The same plant that traveled 4,000 miles to reach Mary's hands in Bethany is now disappearing from the slopes where it has grown for millennia. Not for worship, for face creams. To reach a Palestinian market in the 1st century, it first had to come down from those alpine slopes. Then, the real route began. The longest road a perfume ever traveled. There is a document from the 1st century called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, written by an anonymous Greek-speaking Egyptian merchant around 40 to 55 CE. It is one of the most important commercial records the ancient world left behind. A practical guide, ports, goods, routes, prices. Chapter 49 explicitly lists Spikenard among the exports from Barigaza, the ancient port now known as Bharuch in Gujarat, India. Chapter 48 details how nard traveled from the upper Himalayan regions south through inland routes before reaching the coast. Picture that route. The rhizome is dug from alpine slopes above 3,000 meters, dried, processed into oil. Then it starts moving. South through mountain passes toward the Ganges Plains, along inland trade corridors to the Indian coast. From Barigaza, the oil is loaded onto ships crossing the Arabian Sea using seasonal monsoon winds. Then west through the Persian Gulf, into the hands of Nabatean merchants controlling the overland Arabian routes, then north through Petra and into Palestine, over 4,000 miles, multiple months at minimum, multiple merchants at each handoff. And through all of it, the oil had to survive. Alabaster, a dense form of calcium sulfate, has thermal properties that protect volatile organic compounds during long transport. The Romans and Egyptians both understood this. The alabastron was the ancient world's preservation container for luxury oils. Pliny the Elder documented the nard trade in his Natural History in the 1st century. Indian nard, selling at Roman markets for up to 300 denarii per pound. The Roman physician Galen, writing in the 2nd century, documented spikenard as effective against nervous disorders and insomnia. When Nero burned Arabia's annual incense supply at his wife Poppaea's funeral in 65 CE, spikenard was in those pyres. This was the currency of emperors. By the time it reached Bethany, it had crossed 3 geographic regions, survived months at sea, passed through a dozen hands. When Mary broke that jar, she did not just spend a year's wages. She destroyed something that could never be replaced. What Jatamansone does to a brain under threat. Here is the part that changes how I read this passage. The primary active compound in spikenard is a sesquiterpene ketone called Jatamansone, also known as valerinone, concentrated in the rhizome of Nardostachys, jatamansi. And it has a documented pharmacological profile that nobody connects to this biblical scene. In 2018, a research team at the Defense Food Research Laboratory in Mysore, India, led by Sakina Razack and Hemanth Kumar Kandikattu, published in the journal Metabolic Brain Disease. The study title was specific: Anxiolytic Actions of Nardostachys jatamansi via GABA benzodiazepine channel complex mechanism. What they found? The plant extract operates on the same receptor pathway as diazepam. Valium, 4 standardized behavioral anxiety tests. 7 days of treatment. Results comparable to pharmaceutical sedatives. The study also tracked biodistribution, meaning it mapped exactly where the compound traveled after application. The compound reached brain tissue. Earlier work confirmed the direction. Prabhu Vaif, Karanth K.S., and Rao A. at K.S. Hegde Medical Academy in Mangalore, published in Planta Medica in 1994. After 15 days of sustained treatment, spikenard extract significantly elevated GABA, serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine simultaneously in rat brain tissue, a nervous system stabilizing under sustained stress. Now look at where Mary applied the oil. John 12, his feet. Mark 14, his head. Both. Scalp and feet are 2 of the most effective transdermal absorption sites on the human body. The scalp is densely vascularized, meaning compounds move toward the bloodstream quickly. The compound was being delivered to 2 high absorption sites simultaneously. Now step into the room in Bethany and hold the timeline. 6 days before Passover. There is a price on Jesus' head. What is coming? Arrest, interrogation under political pressure, flogging, and crucifixion. The physiological demand on a human nervous system through that sequence, cortisol flooding, sustained sympathetic activation, extreme neurological stress, is not theoretical. It is extreme. Mary applied a compound operating on GABA benzodiazepine receptors to his head and feet. The same receptors targeted by pharmaceutical anti-anxiety medication. applied to 2 high-absorption zones, 6 days before the most catastrophic sequence of events in the Gospels. Jesus' response in verse 7 frames it prophetically. She has kept this for the day of my burial. But here is the question the pharmacology forces me to ask. Did Mary of Bethany, whether by prophetic understanding or by knowledge of this plant passed through generations, anoint a man's nervous system for what was coming? I cannot prove it. The text does not say it. But the compound she used does exactly what you would want for a human body facing unavoidable, catastrophic trauma. I cannot read past that. Judas counted money. Mary counted days. Judas speaks in John 12, verses 4 through 6. His objection has internal logic. Why was this not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? That is real money and real need. The arithmetic is not wrong. John adds an editorial note immediately. He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He managed the common purse and helped himself to it. So when Judas watched something valuable shatter on the floor, he was watching an asset he could eventually have accessed disappear permanently. New Testament scholar Craig Keener, in his 2003 commentary on John's Gospel, reads this as a collision between 2 entirely different economies. Judas operated in a transactional economy of the present. Money is real. It converts into tangible, immediate good. The calculation is rational and bounded. Mary was operating in what Keener calls an eschatological economy, a prophetic reading of what is actually unfolding right now in real time. Jesus confirms it directly. Verse 7, she has kept this for the day of my burial. Verse 8, you will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Ben Witherington III, in his analysis of John's Gospel, makes a point that has stayed with me. Mary understood the timeline when the 12 disciples who had been told directly what was coming still had not processed it. She was not sentimental. She was precise. There is a cultural layer, too. In the honor-shame framework of first-century Jewish society, documented by Kenneth Bailey, a woman publicly loosening her hair and wiping a man's feet with it was a deliberate act of public self-humiliation. She chose that, with the whole room watching. Judas saw economics. The disciples saw waste. One person had correctly calculated the weight of what was happening. She spent everything she had on that calculation. The fragrance that outlasted everything. Mark 14, verse 9. 6 days before the crucifixion. Wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. 2,000 years later, we are still telling it. The archaeology is real. Alabastron vessels from the 1st century have been recovered from Jerusalem area excavations of the Roman period. The Israel Antiquities Authority has documented organic aromatic residues in some of these containers. The trade that put spikenard into Palestinian households left physical evidence in the ground. Pliny noted something specific about perfume in his Natural History. It is the most wasteful of all luxuries, because it dies in the very hour it is used. Cannot be passed to an air, cannot be stored, pure in the moment of release, then gone. Mary broke a jar that could not be unbroken, released a fragrance that died the moment she poured it, and yet it did not die. India's own Defense Food Research Laboratory documented Jatamansone's effects on the brain under stress. The ancient world knew what this plant was. The modern world is running out of it while rediscovering the same thing. Mary of Bethany poured the rarest plant product in the ancient world on one man because she understood something nobody else in that room had worked out. The plant she used is running out. The moment she created with it is not. That asymmetry between what can be exhausted and what cannot is exactly what Jesus meant when he said, "She has kept this for this day." 2,000 years later, we are still investigating what she knew.